Hey everyone, this is Kestrel Raptorial. I'm back and we're going to build another custom Pokemon deck from the base set. The base set was the first Pokemon trading card game set ever released back in 1999. And when it first came to America, many game store owners were initially reluctant to sell the game because weren't sure how successful it was going to be. So the game didn't see widespread release until 2000, until the next year, and it took off like wildfire. So this is the Brushfire starter deck, or structure deck. That was the deck that I started out with when I first played Pokemon. It focuses on Charmander. Last time we went over the Overgrowth deck, over the card list and improving it, customizing it. We're going to do the same thing with the Charmander starter deck. Charmander is my favorite Kanto starter Pokemon. Evolves into a dragon. Charizard is awesome. So we are going to be adding a Charizard to this deck. Let's get started. We start with the 4 Charmanders that the deck revolves around. Two Charmeleon, Arcanine, and 2 Growlithe, Ninetales, which is the Holofoil that came with the Brushfire deck, rather than Charizard. I guess Charizard was just getting a Charizard in the deck would have been too unbalanced, and the Charizard card really was very unbalanced when the first when it was just the base set, and then later the Jungle and Fossil that came out. I did try to fight someone using a Charizard in their deck before I got mine, and I was obliterated. 2 Vulpix, and the grass Pokemon then. Brushfire, of course, was fire and grass types. 4 Nidoran. Well, 3 Nidoran. I guess the 4th one's just in my sleeves for the collection. Anyway, when we customize this deck, we're just going to use 3 Nidoran, so the Brushfire deck did come with 4. Here are 3 of them. And then it came with 4 Weedle. And 2 Tangela, which has a poison attack. Not bad for the first set. Energy removal, one of those. I went through decks where I would use 3 or 4 of these. They're pretty good. Energy retrieval. Actually a really good card to have in the base set decks because it gets your energy cards back. It was really the only way to do so when the game first came out. 1 Gust of Wind. I traded for a bunch of Gust of Winds. Again, when we just started with the few basic decks, I love Gust of Wind. 1 Lass. 1 Plus Power. 3 Potions. Potions are good. I usually go for a little more search options though. And 1 Switch. Okay, the energies. Well, the Brushfire deck focused on fire and grass Pokemon, so we have, I believe there were 10 grass energy in the deck. 18 fire energy, And if you're rebuilding the base set decks card by card, it's tough to get 18 fire energy. It's possible, but it's tough. But the deck originally came with 18 fire energies. Now what I'm going to do with the Brushfire deck is actually take out the grass-type Pokemon, because what I like to build my decks around are fire and water types. So I added... so I'm going to replace the 10 grass energy with 10 water energy. Let's talk about what we can do with the grass-type Pokemon, though, if you want to keep it to the fire and grass. Put the water aside for a minute. Okay, so the grass-type Pokemon in this deck. We have Tangelas, which I'm most likely going to be taking out. Back in the first generation, there was no Tangrowth. There was no evolution of Tangela, so that's as far as you can go with Tangelas. 4 Weedles, and, well, there were 4 Nidoran. We're going to keep it to 3 Nidoran and actually take out one of the Weedles as well. So 3 Weedle and 3 Nidoran. What can we do with these if we want to use them in the Brushfire deck? Well, if you buy the Overgrowth deck as well, or if you buy them the cards individually, can add for the Weedles 2 Kakuna and a Beedrill. Beedrill is actually pretty good if you can build up your Weedle into a Beedrill. So you can do that. Can also, my little brother also did this when he built his deck. He started with the deck that focuses on Squirtle, the Blackout, which we're also going to be going over in the future. So you can also do what he did. Evolve Nidorans to Nidorino. And another Holofoil, the Nido King from the base set. So, expanding on the grass Pokemon, you can do either or both of those. Good options. Myself, however, I'm going to go with changing Brushfire into a fire and water deck. I just love fire and water Pokemon. They complement each other very well in the card games and the video games. So, okay. For Charmander. I'm also going to be taking out 1. Put that in my collection. I'm going to just use 3 Charmander. 2 Charmeleon. And the king, the ace of this deck. The most sought-after base set Holofoil. One of the most sought-after cards in all of the Pokemon trading card game. Maybe still the most. The base set Holofoil Charizard. Isn't that awesome? In the video games, when I would play the Kanto region and chose Charmander as my starter and evolved it into Charmeleon, then Charizard, I gave it the nickname of this red Velociraptor plushie that I've had since I was 8 years old. Won't tell you what I named it, but I did name it after a stuffed toy that red Velociraptor actually rather resembles Charmander, Charmeleon, or Charizard. So, that's what you can do with the fire types. You can add other fire types. This already came with the Vulpix, Ninetales, Growlithe, Arcanine. You can add more of those if you want. I'm going to do something a little different, though. Change it to a fire and water deck. So, oh, and I'm also going to add a few colorless Pokemon in there. Rather than the Weedles and Nidorans, well, what I could do, if I wanted to stick with grass Pokemon, is could swap it for the base set and jungle. If you like Lepidopteran Pokemon, that's butterflies and moths. Could do Caterpie, Metapod, and Butterfree in place of Weedle, Kakuna, Beedrill. Butterfree's cute. My favorite of the butterfly and moth Pokemon, the Lepidopterans, though, as I showed you when I went over Overgrowth, is Venonat. From the Jungle set, that's the next one that was released after base set. And Venomoth. I love Venomoth. Again, though, for just fire and water, I'm going to be taking out the Tangela, and in place of them, from the Blackout deck, the one that focused on the Squirtle, we're replacing Tangela with two Farfetch'd. When there were just the first couple sets, this was a very versatile Pokemon. And it's colorless, which means it can use any type of energy. Since I am such a sucker for birds, though, I'm also going to be adding Pidgey, let's see, let me collect a couple other cards here. Show you guys. I have my collection spread out here. So let me track a couple down. And just put my Magic the Gathering Shivan Raptors aside. I'll show you the Shivan Raptors, that's cool. Oh, yes, okay. So, evolved form of Pidgey, Pidgeotto. I love Pidgeotto. And from the Jungle set, Pidgeot. Pidgeot's pretty awesome too. And then, I also, when I played the video games, I wanted to collect Dragon Pokemon. So, building the deck after my team in the games, I did get an Aerodactyl. I'll be looking at that with the Fossil Decks and set. Pidgeot's kind of either an eagle or an osprey. Maybe an osprey, because it is said to be a hunter of fish. There are lots of eagles, sea eagles that prey on aquatic creatures too, so it's either an osprey or a sea eagle. And then the dragons, two Dratini, start out with, and one Dragonair. We're just using 2 and 1 because we don't need to add more than that for just the base set. We're not looking at the fossil ones yet, and Dragonite didn't come out until the fossil expansion. So, Farfetch'd, Pidgey, Pidgeotto, Pidgeot, Dratini, and Dragonair. Then continuing with the bird and dragon, fire and water, 2 Magikarp, and Gyarados, the Holofoil from the Overgrowth deck. So we're doing a lot of mixing and matching, swapping between the base set decks. Gyarados is a sea dragon. So adding the holofoils together, Pidgeot, Gyarados, and Charizard, that's a pretty formidable team, all in one deck. Dragon and Bird of Prey, those are my favorite creatures, and that's what I'm turning the Brushfire deck into. So we should also talk about what I'm going to do with the trainer cards. We covered the Pokemon. We covered the energy cards, fire and water. Oh, yes. I was going to do this with the Overgrowth deck, but I decided I didn't really need it. But for this deck, I'm definitely going to be adding in 2 double colorless energies. Double colorless is very useful when you're dealing with Pokemon who need a lot of energy to use their attacks. Pidgeot and Charizard, Gyarados needs all water energy, but Pidgeot and Charizard, Charizard's ability can transform its any energy attached to it into fire energy, so Charizard and Pidgeot can make good use of the double colorlesses. Okay, so we started with energy removal, 2 energy retrievals, Gust of Wind, Blast, plus power, 3 potions and a switch. I'm going to be taking out both Blast and plus power and replacing them with 2 more Gust of Winds because I love Gust of Winds. It very much fits in with the blow you away, Bird of Prey, and Dragon theme. Love Gust of Winds. I'm keeping the 2 energy retrievals because those are really good. I have kept energy removals before. This time I may not. Going to be taking out actually the potions and the switch because draw cards were very rare when the Pokemon game first came out. But we did have Bill, which lets you draw 2 cards from your deck, and drawing extra cards is very advantageous, so we're going to add 4 of them. I would also like to dig out one other card I have. Snuck away. Okay. I'm about to come back. Could swap the energy removal for this card, super energy removal. Or I could just add that in. You discard 1 energy card attached to one of your Pokemon to get rid of 2 energy cards attached to your opponent's Pokemon. Very devastating when the game first came out. Not as much of a threat nowadays, but in the base set it certainly was. I also like to add, and I'm not really keeping track of whether this is all adding up to 60 cards or not. We'll, depending on what you do with your Brushfire deck, you can modify it. Professor Oak and Pokédex. I like to add these because these were very good for when the Pokemon game first came out as well. Professor Oak, discard your hand, then draw 7 cards. You definitely only want to use this when you've got either a very small hand or a hand you're not really going to be using. Then just draw 7 new cards. It's great. Pokédex is a little too slow for the game anymore, but in the base set, again, it was pretty good. Okay. Let's see, water, fire, grass. I think we've gone over pretty much all I'm going to do with the Brushfire deck. It's my Bird and Dragon deck. Next time we will be going over the Blackout, the deck that focuses on Squirtle. And we'll also do Zap a little later on. So there's my Bird and Dragon deck that I built for the base set of Pokemon. That's what I went to Pokemon League events and tournaments with. And it did indeed chomp and eat and slash and blow my opponents away.